the Moorish Empire. I received a message from an elder Moor, and he put up this Moorish Empire clipping that I had, friendly relations, and it speaks of the Moorish Empire was the first to recognize United States flag. And the brother put it up, and as you see, he sent me the analytics of the information, 4,520 plays, 302 likes. So the information is getting out. You don't just say Morocco was the first to recognize U.S., it was the Moorish Empire. So all of you European pale skins who call yourself white, when you speak of sovereignty or anything in the Americas, you better speak of the Moors, the Moorish Americans, because they're the first ones to recognize, because you stand under that banner and call yourself United States, because if you don't say you are, then who are you? You're stateless unless you have a nation and a nationality. In U.S., you're stuck in the corner, brother. So let's go ahead and read through this. The Moorish Empire, an ambassador to go to St. Louis. Friendly relations have existed, however, since the revolution. Our flag recognized by Emperor of Morocco as early as 1779. Resolution by Congress. Before the reading begins, I wanted to say honors to all who has been studying on the Amicable Almanac. Brothers and sisters is coming in to study. So again, this is the Moorish Empire recognizes the U.S. flag. The Moorish Empire has never been represented in the United States by an ambassador, and this fact adds additional interest to the announcement that the emperor of the most isolated of Mohammedan nations will be represented by a special embassy in the country at the time of the St. Louis Exposition. Yet friendly relations have existed between Washington and Fez from the time of the Revolution. Even in the days of the Barbary pirates, the United States chastised Algiers and Tripoli, but had no serious trouble with the most formidable of Barbary powers, and the only one still free and independent. The Emperor of Morocco, then reigning, recognized the independence of the United States during the Revolution, and his country was long looked upon with favor by America. An imperial edict by the Moorish sovereign in October 1779 included the United States among the countries whose flags might freely enter into the ports of his dominions, and in consequence of his determination, he has given orders to the commanders of his vessels that they let freely pass all ships and other vessels carrying the said flags without molesting them, to the end that they may arrive at his ports, take refreshments, and enjoy in them the same privileges and immunities with those of the other nations which whom his imperial majesty maintains peace. It's all because of the Moors, brothers and sisters. It said the Moorish dominions, the Moorish Empire recognized U.S. John Jay's letter. When the news of the emperor's edict reached John Jay, then representing the fighting American colonies at Madrid, he addressed a letter to Stephen D. Audibert Cail, a Frenchman who had been designated by the emperor as consul for unrepresented foreign nations at his court. Minister Jay said, "The declaration of His Majesty the Emperor of Morocco does honor to his liberality and wisdom, and I shall with great pleasure transmit the copy of it to His Excellency the President of Congress. Although I have no particular instructions on the subject, yet the knowledge that I have of the sentiments of Congress enables me to give assurances of their disposition to cultivate peace and harmony with all nations." The same thing we've been speaking about. Noble Ali came back, Pan American Conference. For what? Peace and harmony with all nations. I am persuaded that this Majesty's declaration will be very agreeable to them. Fast forward to these days and times, how they speak about the Moors. You see what I mean? You should be ashamed of yourselves. I am persuaded that His Majesty's declaration will be very agreeable to them, and that a correspondence conduct on their part towards the subjects of Morocco will convince of the truth of these assurances. News traveled slowly in those days, and the information that the Moorish Empire, then a strong sea power, could be added to the nations recognizing our independence did not reach this country for several months. It ain't reached the country in over 100 years. What are they talking about? In November 1780, President Huntington instructed Dr. Benjamin Franklin, our minister at Paris, to give a Moroccan government assurances in the name of Congress and in terms the most respectful to the emperor that we entertain a sincere disposition to cultivate the most perfect friendship with him. Now they're killing your brothers in the streets and their own, and are desirous to enter into a treaty of commerce with him, and that we shall embrace a favorable opportunity to announce our wishes in form. At the same time, instructions were sent to J to inform the Emperor that United States and Congress assembled entertain a sincere disposition to cultivate the most perfect friendship with him, and that they will embrace a favorable occasion to announce their wishes in form. Resolution of Congress. After the close of the revolution, and on the very day that John Jay returned from Spain, was made Minister of Foreign Affairs, Congress adopted the following resolution in secret session: that our ministers to be commissioned for traveling with foreign nations make known to the Emperor of Morocco the great satisfaction which Congress feels from the amicable disposition he has shown towards these states, and his readiness to enter into alliance with them, that the occupations of the war and distance of our situation have prevented our meeting his friendship so early as we wished, but the powers are now delegated to them for entering into treaty with him, in the execution of which they are ready to proceed, and that as to the expenses of his minister, they do therein what is for the honor and interest of the United States. The American ministers to European nations concluded a treaty with Morocco. On its receipt in this country, George Washington, in a message dated on his birthday in 1791, urged Congress to recognize the treaty as important to the liberty and property of our citizens, because it's all the Moorish Empire, brothers and sisters. Read it and weep. This treaty held good for 50 years. That's that 50 mandate they've been talking about, right? Every 50 years, and every 50 years they renew this treaty. Through the reigns of many emperors, that there were 3 during General Washington's presidency. Under Jefferson, a small cloud arose. Captain Bainbridge of the Philadelphia seized a Moroccan ship and the American merchant's vessel, which the former had taken as a prize. Booty and prize. He reported the matter to the authorities, and in his annual message to Congress in 1803, Jefferson said the conduct of the emperor's vessel was without cause and without explanation, and recommended that Congress should give the provisional authority necessary to restrain these depredations should they be confined, and that all differences had been amicably adjusted under the treaty, which had been recognized and confirmed by the emperor. At the same time, he applauded the attitude of Captain Bainbridge. The treaty expired by limitation in 1834, and Jackson in a message recommended its renewal, and 2 years later a new treaty was concluded at Mequinez in the emperor's dominions, in relations of amity and goodwill. During Jackson's administration, the emperor presented the president with a lion and several horses, which were forwarded to the United States consul at Tangier. Whether they ever got farther than Tangier is not at present in evidence. Indeed, brothers and sisters. All the treaties with Morocco have been concluded in that country, and no embassy has ever before been sent to America. It will doubtless prove a very interesting feature in the World's Fair, and the embassy will receive many attentions. And as we showed on demonstrations, Moorish Science Temple was always at the World's Fairs, where the Shriners said they went and got their warrant of authority. The embassy to England. It is not the practice of Moorish monarch to be represented at any foreign court by regular envoys, but he sends special embassies on formal occasions. Ain't that special appearance, propria persona? As this ancient country changes practices, slowly perhaps some idea can be gathered of what the embassy to America will be like by reading of the first Moroccan embassy to England. It was sent in the days of the Merry Monarch in the year 1682. John Evelyn's diary tells how the embassy impressed that stern old churchman. Evelyn says, "I saw the audience of the Morocco ambassador, his retinue not numerous. He was received in the banqueting house, both their majesties being present. He came up to the throne without making any sort of reference, not bowing his head or body. He spoke by a renegado Englishman, for whose safe return there was a promise. They were all clad in the Moorish habit, cassocks of colored cloth or silk, with buttons and loops. Over this, an albaga, or white woolen mantle, so large as to wrap both head and body, and sash, or small turban, naked-legged and armed, but with leather socks like the Turks, rich scimitar, and large calico sleeve shirts. The ambassador had a string of pearls oddly woven in his turban. I fancy the old Roman habit was little different as to the mantle and the naked limbs. He was a handsome person, well featured, of a wise look, and extremely civil. Their presents were lions and ostriches, their errand about a peace at Tangier. But the concourse and tumult of these people were intolerable, so as the soldier could keep no order, which these strangers were astonished at first, there being nothing so regular, exact, and performed with such silence as is on all these public occasions of their country. A week later he wrote, "This evening I was at the entertainment of the Morocco ambassador at the Duchess of Portsmouth's glorious apartment at Whitehall, where there was a great banquet of sweet meats and music, but at which both the ambassador and his retinue behaved themselves with extraordinary moderation and modesty, though placed about a long table a lady between two Moors, and among there were the king's natural children, namely Lady Lichfield and Sussex." And the Sussex, you can get into Cornwall and all that stuff, man. The Duchess of Portsmouth, Nellie, etc. Concubines and cattle of that sort, as splendid as jewels and excess of bravery could make them, the Moors neither admiring nor seeming to regard anything, furniture or the like, with any earnestness, and but decently tasting of the banquet. They drank a little milk and water, but not a drop of wine. They also drunk of a sorbet. And sorbet, that's a Muslim drink right there. Me and my brother was speaking about putting it up because he lives by the beach. So he's going to set up cherry sorbet and lime sorbet for the tourists or whoever come in there. We was talking about that, brothers. The Moors did not look about or stare on the ladies or express the least surprise, but with a courtly negligence and pace, countenance, and whole behavior, answering only to such questions as were asked with a great deal of wit and gallantry, and so gravely took leave with this compliment, that God would bless the Duchess of Portsmouth and the Prince, her son, meaning the little Duke of Richmond. The king came in at the latter end, just as the ambassador was going away. In this manner was the slave, for he was no more at home, entertained by most of the nobility in town, and went off into Hyde Park on horseback, where he and his retinue showed their extraordinary activity in horsemanship, and flinging and catching their lances at full speed, managing their spears with incredible agility. He went sometimes to the theater, where upon any foolish or fantasy action he could not forbear laughing, but he endeavored to hide it with extraordinary modesty and gravity. In a word, the Russian ambassador, still at court, behaved himself like a clown compared to this civil heathen. The Moorish Empire. European diplomats are ready to divide the Sultanate. And I was going to get into the Sultan in this demonstration, but we got too deep in. We might do it on the next one. But in regards to the Sultan, I have clippings where one of the Moorish sultans amalgamated and had a child with one of the mothers from the harem, but it happened to be the wife of this European, and he made a point to go out and start kidnapping Moorish princes and selling them into slavery in the US. So, and also in regards to the Sultan, I'm reading that any decision the Sultan makes, he has to then go to the Ali Sharif and get the yes. And if the Ali Sharif says no, then the Sultan can't do whatever he wants to do. So the main power is in the Ali Sharif. It's like 5:30 p.m. right now. We're going to go ahead and upload this. And by that time, man, y'all can get into this. But then at 7 p.m., we got Grand Sheikh Cujo from a secret location with a special guest, Islam.